Yeah, 100%. And how often do you see that in corporate innovation programs, that they're really good at generating ideas, but then it just maybe the team isn't enabled, or they don't have the right people, or they didn't allocate enough resources. So the
Yeah.
decisions never happen, and therefore, really actions never go anywhere.
Yeah, far more than I like to admit. And this is where um, you see that innovation isn't an idea problem, it's a leadership problem.
Hmm.
Because the team will come up with tons of ideas. They'll do the work they can to narrow it down. But ultimately, they have something. They have a nugget of a business idea, product, whatever it is, and they need more investment. And so you go to the people who can give you the investment, and inevitably, 99.9% of the time, you hear like, well, I need more data. Okay. Well, things that have never been done before don't have data
Yeah.
to support them. So the only way to get data is to do something, but to do something, we need resources. But you're saying in order to get resources, I need to give you data. We are now in a chicken and egg situation. And typically the leader does the very logical thing, which is I have finite resources. A dollar I give to you with no promise of ROI is a dollar I can't give to the current business where I have a defined ROI and a defined time period,
Hmm.
and innovation loses out. And this is the struggle of corporate innovation, and why it's so like it's very gratifying to focus on ideas because then you're never at risk.
Yeah.
When you make a decision and then when you put resources behind it so that action can be taken, now you're at risk. And so, you get conversations like I had several years ago with a client where they're like, we need a business that launches in 2 years that will be 250 million revenue in 4 years. And I was sitting with the innovation team when they said that, and the innovation team was two people. And I was just like, okay, let me just stop you there. Because if I could do that, I would be doing that. I would not be sitting here at this table. I would be creating the $250 million in 4 years business. And so it's about kind of that education of innovation takes time, it takes resources, and it takes commitment, it takes courage. And if that's not where you're at, that's okay. But like, let's call it.
Yeah. Yeah. What popped in my head was thinking about that corporate venture capital structure
Mhm.
before. You could almost think about having an internal corporate venture capital
Yeah.
too, where it's just a separate fund set aside to go out and play and see what happens, and use
Hmm.
the resources and structure of the business where you can to uh, build up those fundamentals. So if it,
Yeah. I love that.
yeah, if it's like pharmaceutical company, for instance, they have that really structured test structure. But if they're also a manufacturer, it's it's just everything's got a cost center. So sometimes
Yeah.
it's hard to do something. But um, what if you have basically like I would say a entrepreneur with a really good idea,
Mhm.
um, what sort of advice would you give them to frame their innovation and help them scale, you know kind of within this little more structured environment, I guess?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Um, so first off, understand your customers, the internal and the external ones. Figure out what problems you're solving. Because your idea is inevitably solving a problem, a more tangible problem,
Yeah.
something like that. Um, but also kind of know the intangible problems
Yeah.
that will come up. How are people incentivized? How are people measured? What's important? What's a big priority versus a small priority? Like, really understand the landscape. And then if you choose to fight the battle, if you choose to pursue the idea, like we talked about, build the coalition and run experiments, and be willing to break the rules. Like, the rules are there to keep everyone safe and everything progressing as it is. And if you follow those rules, you will end up in the same place that you already are. So figure out how to smartly and safely break the rules. And this very specific tip that a friend of mine taught me, it's a magic phrase that, because you will hear no all the time, ask people what they need to see to say yes.
Yeah, that's great advice.
Because it changes the conversation. You're enrolling them as a partner, as a problem solver, and you're getting really valuable information. Because if they say, like, there's literally nothing on heaven and earth you could show me that would get me to say yes, like, that's really important to know.
Yeah.
But if there is something that could get them to say yes, go get it.
Yeah, that's a great sales. You know, if you think about sales, like, that could save you so much time.
Yeah.
And there's been so many cases where people have gone after ideas that just aren't relevant, and people are trying to be nice, or I don't know.
Yes, people will try to be nice. They will. And one of the things that I coach my clients, but also I teach. So I coach my students on when they're presenting prototypes is say the least amount possible, because the more you talk, the more you describe, the more people are going to realize how invested you are. And so the nicer they're going to be, which means the less honest. And
that's great advice.
If you have something that people are like, oh, they spend so much time and energy, and they really like, nobody's going to call the baby ugly, but the baby is ugly. So yeah, you need people to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And you know, you may not like what they say, but it's honest.
Yeah. Kind of like a last question here on industries. What are the industries right now that you're most excited about? I guess current or future innovation, how they're being affected or disrupted.
Yeah. So I think, as we talked about, anything that is, you know, Gen AI touches on. So a lot of that is professional services.
Yeah.
So very interesting to see how that plays out. I think there is clean tech, I think, is very interesting because there's a lot happening in Europe in terms of legislation and laws around what companies have to do, have to prove. There's also a lot of backlash now around, like, hey, you know, things that we thought were clean energy, you know, when you actually think about the total lifetime cost, you know, actually aren't as good for the environment as we thought. So I think there's a very interesting tension that is coming to a head in clean tech. I think that will be very interesting to watch. I think also kind of related to that, and this is probably because of a client I'm working with now, but the question around food and farming and agriculture. You know, as we see the effects of climate change, as we see, you know, climate shifting. I saw an article a couple of weeks ago that, like, Sweden is likely going to become the next major wine producing region.
Wow.
Sweden.
That's crazy.
Like, so there's going to be a lot of stuff happening, not in the next 2 years, but certainly in the next 5 to 10, that's going to require some rethinking. And that just creates lots of opportunity for innovation and disruption and all those fun things.